Long before Victor opened the Maharaja, before Jasper discovered a labyrinth, before Nellie G became a fashion icon, and Annabelle became the spark of the resistance, vampires crawled along the streets, hills, and valleys of Los Angeles. Hello, and welcome back to Masquerade Monday. Last time we talked about the pre-revolt history of L.A., and in this part we will talk about the beginning of the revolt, so if you missed the first part, you can watch that here. Now a quick disclaimer before we begin. Firstly, not just vampires are in Los Angeles. In fact, they were one of the last monsters in the world of darkness to arrive in the area. And although their histories have affected the development of the city, we are just going to be focusing on kindred activity for this video. Now with that out of the way, let's dive in. With Christopher Houghton finding the perfect art form in motion pictures, he became the driving force behind major productions and the studio system, bringing in a steady stream of both mortals and kindred, all the while remaining hidden in the background of vampire politics, putting his blood-bound child, Don Sebastian, forth as Prince of the City. In 1943, however, a vampire appeared in the city by the name of Jeremy McNeil. Born in Scotland in 1631, Jeremy McNeil gained a reputation as a powerful warrior. A traveling Brujah named James the Red watched his progress and decided to add McNeil to the ranks of the undead. His Scottish clan rejected him after his embrace, fearing him as a spawn of the devil. McNeil traveled to the United Kingdom, serving as a mercenary, and found himself eventually opposing the British rule over Ireland. Eventually, Jeremy traveled to the colonies of the New World, hoping to promote his ideals about political freedom among the mortals, and he found himself engulfed in the American War of Independence, siding with the colonists. By the 1940s, Ventrue pressure had forced Jeremy out of his New England home, and the immortal rebel gradually made his way across the country before coming to Los Angeles. His reputation as a champion of the underdog meant that no prince would allow him to remain in their city for very long. This heroic, charismatic vampire fascinated Christopher, so much so that he refused to let Don Sebastian throw Jeremy out of Los Angeles, spending a great deal of time listening from the shadows as Jeremy spoke to the growing number of unhappy kindred. Of course, out of his long-standing fear of rejection, Christopher never did make himself known to this leader of anarch kindred. Even before Jeremy's arrival, Los Angeles had become a haven for dispossessed kindred from all over the United States. The expansion of Ventrue influence on the East Coast and increasing presence of the Sabbat in such cities as New York and Miami forced more and more kindred, particularly anarchs, to move west. As they left in search of freer, safer havens and discovered that anarchs were not welcome hardly anywhere, they kept moving until they reached the Pacific. Some anarchs opted to move to San Francisco, but the prince there made it very clear that he would not inherit another prince's problems. The lore of San Francisco is a bit contradictory depending on which book you're reading from which edition, but I think it would be safe to say that Prince Vannevar Thomas is the likely prince for this time period, who ruled approximately from 1910 to the late 2010s, but we will go more into that when we talk about Los Angeles in Modern Nights as seen in L.A. by Night. In contrast to Vannevar Thomas, Don Sebastian seemed to have no qualms about accepting refugees, likely reasoning that more kindred in his city meant more power for him, and under Don Sebastian's guidance, the city became a magnet for the most debauched and perverse vampires in North America, recapturing its reputation as the most decadent city. But this time, it was strictly among the kindred. Although Don Sebastian proved too egotistical to understand the danger posed to the masquerade, he did make some effort to hide the most flagrant breaches. In general, however, Don Sebastian was amused by the antics and was blissfully unaware of the increasing tension between the corrupt Camarilla vampires and the streetwise anarchs, who felt they were being unfairly oppressed and blamed for the increased human eyes on blatant kindred activity. By 1944, it became clear to Don Sebastian that his sire Christopher had not only become enamored with Jeremy McNeil, but with the anarch cause as well. Along with many others of the local kindred, Christopher took up Jeremy's vision of a world without princes or overlords of any kind. Don Sebastian had been blood-bound to Christopher for many decades at this point, and had witnessed his sire turn a loving gaze on everyone but him. And finally, Don Sebastian could stand it no more. The primogen of the city were putting increased pressure on him to do something about the anarch situation, and with Christopher all but ignoring him, Don Sebastian feared that his sire would overthrow him and put Jeremy on the throne of Los Angeles. Don Sebastian could not bring himself to outright have Jeremy slain, fearing retribution from Christopher, but he decided he had to do something. One night, when Christopher was out of town, Don Sebastian had Jeremy seized and savagely beaten, then ordered him to leave the city, threatening him with further violence if he did not obey.
That's how all this got started. That's how L.A. got started. This all used to be tower turf. This all used to be Camarilla's domain. They had a prince, and they had primogen, and they had a sheriff and harpies and stuff you haven't even heard about yet, right? And Jeremy McNeil, your clan, Bruja, he tried to reason with the prince, tried to get him to see that tyranny, not the thing. They beat the crap out of him. They nearly killed him for speaking his mind. And the young had enough.
Jeremy limped away from the prince and stumbled upon another Bruja named Salvador Garcia. Born in Spain in the late 1800s, Salvador Garcia was the son of Spanish farmers. In young adulthood, Garcia joined various movements occurring in Spain. During his tenure in one of these groups, Garcia was beaten and nearly killed by the police, but a savior appeared in the form of a vampire, who offered Garcia both immortality and the chance to keep fighting oppression, which Salvador accepted. Now a Bruja, Garcia joined his clanmates in fighting back against Ventru-controlled Spain. In an unsuccessful attack on the Prince of Barcelona, Garcia's sire was destroyed, and with him, the Spanish anarch movement. Garcia promptly fled to the United States, making his way across the country and coming to rest in Los Angeles in the 1940s. Eager to assist in the growing anarch rebellion and looking to use the violence against Jeremy as a rally point, Salvador was counseled towards patience by his fellow Bruja rebel. Jeremy didn't believe the anarchs were ready to take a stand against the Camarilla, at least not until he could attempt to persuade the LA primogen into their camp. But the primogen failed to understand the gravity of the situation. Instead, they enthusiastically endorsed Don Sebastian's actions against Jeremy as a lesson to remind the anarchs of their place. Unsurprisingly, the anarchs were furious. Many of them wanted to go to war immediately, but Salvador, Jeremy, and a number of other prominent kindred were able to convince them of restraint. Instead, they made plans, formed hit squads, and sharpened their stakes. A call went out to anarchs in neighboring cities, scouts sought out havens of elders, and located them with surprising ease. For the next few weeks, Los Angeles sat still as the anarchs made their preparations, and the ivory tower rejoiced in finally having crushed the rebellion. But this planning, combined with the carelessness of the Camarilla kindred, explains more than anything else why LA's anarchs would succeed where no others had before. In the next part, we'll discuss the glorious revolution of the anarchs of LA, an important event that would shape the Los Angeles we see in LA by night. I make videos multiple times a week, so if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.